Captain Midnight.
This video is brought to you by Skillshare. 6 years ago, a video was uploaded to YouTube called Never Touch Jimmy Fallon's Hand, which shows the Tonight Show host interviewing Rami Malek and appearing to look absolutely disgusted when the Mr. Robot star touches his hand. These 12 seconds have surpassed the original interview in views by millions, which is a little strange when you think about it. Taken in a vacuum, there's nothing morally wrong with what Jimmy Fallon did here. Yet here it sits, 22 million views later, showing that people definitely found it funny, infuriating, or both. Why is that? Well, I think the simplest answer is probably the best one. It's fascinating to see a crack in the armor, a look behind what appears to be a fairly well-maintained facade. But is that fair? And what does it say about our strange relationship to late-night talk show hosts? Honestly, hell if I know, but I'm gonna try to break it down anyway. I made a video about Jimmy Fallon recently, one where I really just got some old feelings over a bad musical segment off my chest. One thing I saw pop up over and over again in the comments are the words fake laughter, and I probably mentioned that in the video at some point too. It's one of the go-to criticisms of Fallon's interview style, just recited over and over again. I largely agree, but I also wonder if some of this laughter is maybe more sincere than we think. After all, Jimmy Fallon was known throughout his time on Saturday Night Live for breaking into laughter in the middle of sketches. That was a big knock against him for years, so let's give Fallon the benefit of the doubt for a minute and say, just for the sake of argument, that he is actually breaking into laughter all of these times. The guy just finds it that hilarious. Would that change anything? I think one of his biggest issues as a TV host is that it kind of wouldn't. Because often, though to be fair not always, his guests seem as surprised as us that Fallon is laughing as much as he does. It's often throwing off the rhythm of the interview. So it kind of doesn't matter whether the laugh is genuine or not, because the atmosphere it's cultivating often just feels uncomfortable, which is what I think most people are responding to. Now compare that to another late night talk show host who got brought up in the comments of my last Fallon video a lot, Graham Norton. Norton's talk show is generally fun, light, and easygoing, which is what The Tonight Show is reaching for and often failing. For those who haven't seen Norton shows, it's a very different style. I might even be cheating a little bit here because Fallon is operating under the constraints of a very rigid American talk show format. Norton puts multiple celebrities on one big couch together. When one guest tells a story, another one might just jump in with their own. They're also usually drinking, which probably helps. I feel a little goofy describing something this simple, but really, the more I watch of it, the more it sinks in how artificial American talk shows have become. That's not all Jimmy Fallon's fault, but like James Corden and Ellen, he's become a poster child for what a lot of people just can't stand about it. And he's the only one of those three still on the air. Another big difference between Norton and Fallon is how they handle awkwardness. Norton will straight up ask celebrities about their dating lives, their biggest flops, their opinions on things that might get a little uncomfortable, and because he's so skilled and casual as an interviewer, guests are usually happy to go along with it, or at least they want to look like they are. Fallon interviews seem, and kind of are, pre-scripted in a way that just seems terrified of making anyone even vaguely uncomfortable, even as he often does manage to do that. Just every project is amazing, every experience is wonderful, every guest is absolutely the best. I mean, seriously, go back and watch that Paris Hilton interview that's infamous for the NFT pitch. The forgotten part of it is Fallon just telling Hilton how amazing she is over and over again. In the span of like 4 minutes, he has to act like her mom, who I guess is like on a Real Housewives show, is the most entertaining person on all of television, and then act incredibly impressed by this awful video Hilton has of what she describes as an indoor Burning Man, but looks like a Discovery Zone or McDonald's playroom for rich 40-year-olds. Now, I don't know if Graham Norton or Conan O'Brien or anyone could have salvaged this, but as a prelude to her NFT pitch, it's just brutal. Let me know if you want a full video on that segment, by the way. I've been thinking about it. Anyway, at no point does this feel like a real conversation. Now, while Fallon has certainly had much better interviews and has had guests on that he has a better rapport with, the overall problem still remains. These don't feel like real conversations. And when you're trying to cultivate a really loose, fun atmosphere, and also, by the way, are competing with like a million podcasts now, working with way fewer restrictions, that's going to be more clear than ever. Which brings us back to the uncomfortable hand grab. Honestly, this isn't even the most awkward part of the interview. Earlier in the conversation, there's a pretty weird moment where he tells Malick that if he had his email or phone number after he saw Bohemian Rhapsody, he would have called him a gazillion times, presumably about how much he loved it. To which Malick flatly says that Fallon actually does have his email and phone number.
You have my email and phone number.
That's true, but I decided to not call you up.
Now, to be fair, Jimmy and the crowd mostly roll with this fine. It wasn't a Dakota Johnson on Ellen moment or anything, but it is kind of funny that two mildly infamous moments of Fallon's insincerity come from like the same 7.5 minute stretch. It's a tough watch. And the thing is, I actually do believe Jimmy Fallon when he says he loved Bohemian Rhapsody. But when he responds with the same enthusiasm to that and like Paris Hilton's shitty looking collage NFT, it's very easy to see why people have come to resent this stuff. Viewers aren't stupid. They know this man can't possibly be that enthusiastic about everything. I think it would benefit The Tonight Show immensely to just have him take the foot off the gas a little bit. Now, Graham Norton is rarely insulting the projects his guests are there to promote or anything, but he's also not constantly acting like he's ecstatic that there's a new Jurassic World movie out or whatever. He at least appears to just have conversations, and that kind of authenticity is hard to fake. I'm focusing on Fallon here, but like I said, so much of this just applies to American network talk shows in general. I actually do think he's better at this kind of thing than James Corden was, who was introduced, at least to Americans, as this fresh, affable presence and ended up taking the brunt of even more criticism for how his off-screen personality did not match the, let's be honest, nice but fairly obnoxious guy that he played on screen. Or Ellen, whose brand of relentless positivity eventually fell apart after decades in the spotlight. That's why someone like Graham Norton stands out. He's not afraid to let things go off the rails, or just get a little uncomfortable here and there, or let the guests kind of flounder for a second. It just feels like there's a baseline of authenticity, even if that authenticity is of a guy who's been doing this long enough to know that not every moment has to be a home run, or I guess whatever the cricket version of a home run is. I watch a lot of old American late night TV, and I still feel like a lot of those interviews hold up, even if the monologues sometimes don't. But it's just really easy to remind myself of why this format can work. But the current slate of hosts, and Fallon especially, just seem to be making the worst possible case for themselves in 2025. These shows just feel like relics, and maybe that was unavoidable. The desk, the mugs, the band, the monologues, like maybe this is all just doomed to feel like a throwback. But I do just feel like there's gotta be more life left in it than this. But Jimmy Fallon's over-the-top, constant laugh, fake or not, is a major issue because it heightens the artificiality of a format that is already struggling to resemble actual human conversation. And I just don't think it has to be that way. Now, this feels a little too close to how I ended the last Fallon video, so let me dig a little deeper here. If you don't have any affection for this format at all, you could probably accuse me of wanting to hold on to something that's had its day in the sun and maybe should ride off into retirement. I could not blame you for that. But I honestly don't think the answer is to just blow up the format entirely. I just like to see them let a little more air in. Look to the Dick Cavett Show and its often freewheeling, contentious conversations, or the absurdism of 90s Conan. There's just so much you can do in this format, and I do think the whole suit and ties, fancy dresses Hollywood angle still has some merit to it in a world where so many podcasts are just like guys in hoodies talking. That being said, I think The Tonight Show just needs a clean slate, to put the 2010s behind it and redefine what kind of tone it wants to have. The Tonight Show, as of last year, has lost something like 41% of its audience since the 2018-2019 season. I'm not going to put that all on Fallon by any means. decades. Almost all of linear TV is declining. But it still signals that there needs to be a massive change. And as someone who would like to see The Tonight Show live on and thrive in some form, I think they need to make that change sooner rather than later. So I've had a pretty good time criticizing Jimmy Fallon here, but sometimes you just gotta look inward. And you know, there are times for me when it's really difficult to stay focused and on track. Maybe you can relate. That's why I'd really like to recommend Productivity Masterclass, Principles and Tools to Boost Your Productivity on Skillshare. It's a great way to build a foundation and rhythm to your work, with a focus on both productivity and happiness, without the burnout or the procrastination. It's a ton of help, and it's one of many great classes on Skillshare, an online learning community with thousands of classes to explore. Learning that comes directly from real, super talented, and successful creatives. It's really the place for creatives, with tons of topics ranging from illustration, graphic design, photography, music, marketing, and more. All backed by Skillshare's 7-day free trial and a risk-free 30-day money-back guarantee. The first 500 people to use my link in the description or scan the QR code will receive 20% off their first year of Skillshare. Get started today.
Here's a special tip for the fellas and girls who have not already joined Captain Midnight's new 1940 Flight Patrol. You'd better hurry up and join at once because there's a big adventure ahead. The thing to do now is to get started because we're going to have not only barrels of fun, but loads of free gifts and prizes too.